With the second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State.
But you know, as they say, hail to the Redskins. Let's roll, man. Let's go.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Luke. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. So the 2020 NFL Draft officially in the books. We've had a chance to kind of digest everything that has taken place. The Redskins ultimately came away with 8 new players to add to the mix for the upcoming season. They added one more pick via the Trent Williams trade. He is now in the rearview mirror. We can now look forward to the season without the distraction of whether Trent Williams will play or not play. Will he be traded or not traded? He has officially been moved. They picked up an additional 5th round pick to add to the 7 that they already came into the draft with. There's been a lot of discussion about this draft. A lot of people and a lot of fans love the first 4 selections, not so much the back end of the draft and the final 4 selections. We'll dig knee deep into that tonight and break down each and every single one of these selections. Now, with that said, we've already done homework on 4 of the selections. The very first 4 selections made by the Redskins, for all intents and purposes, we've already broken them down in some way, shape, or form on one of the different programs that we've done leading up to this one here. Outside of Chase Young, I've given you my write-up for the next 3 selections after Young in this draft. Antonio Gibson, we've already talked about him. I did a separate video on Antonio Gibson and gave you my write-up for him, so no need to rehash that tonight. We've talked about Saahdia Charles. As a matter of fact, Saahdia Charles and Antonio Gandy-Golden, you got their write-ups in the very same video the day that we traded Trent Williams. So if you're looking for the thorough breakdown of those 3 players, they're in different spots, but they're all here on the Louie T network. So probably not going to rehash those tonight, but I'll give you my feel on those players as we get to those picks. But Chase Young in particular, we have not actually had a chance to break down my write-up on Chase Young. I've given you a draft wrap-up, draft prospects 101 rather, on my IG account. And if you haven't already seen that, there's the IG account down below there, Louie T Network _. Go check it out. Follow me on IG. A lot of content coming out there as well, and a lot of updates coming on the IG account as well. So going to give you my Chase Young write-up because you guys haven't heard that from me to this point. So we'll get into that. We'll get into all of the picks that the Redskins made, see what exactly Kyle Smith and Ron Rivy have cooked up in this particular draft. And I'll kind of give you my feel for what they think, what the reasoning was behind the selections. I actually got a chance to hear them talk about some of these selections. So I'll kind of weave in my thoughts with what they said, and we'll then get out of here. So with that being said, let's get to work. I've got my write-ups here in front of me. Let's get to work on the Redskins 2020 NFL Draft. And we first start, obviously, with the big main attraction, the reason that this draft feels like the Redskins won something. We start with the 2nd overall pick in the draft, edge rusher out of the Ohio State University, Chase Young. So I haven't actually given you my write-up for Chase Young, so we're going to do that right now. And I watched a ton of games for Chase Young. And really, I followed his entire career at Ohio State. Just because of watching the Bozas the last couple of years, you couldn't help but, see Chase Young on the opposite side of those guys dominating. And so he didn't just come out of nowhere in his final year at Ohio State. He was putting up numbers his entire career there. So what he did in 2019 was just a culmination of what he had been doing the entire time. And so edge rusher out of the Ohio State University, 6'5", 264, 34-inch arms. He's the complete package. 21 tackles for loss this past season, 16 and a half of them being sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 3 pass breakups, and a block kick this season. So he filled up the stat sheet. His career numbers, 42 and a half tackles for loss, 31 sacks, 8 forced fumbles, 8 pass breakups, and a block kick. So this guy just put up numbers throughout the course of his career. And those are ridiculous numbers for a ridiculous athlete as an edge rusher. He was my number one edge rusher in this draft by far and away, the best player in this draft overall. And my player comp for him is Julius Peppers. So let's get to the proceedings this evening with him. His strengths, I should say, size, obviously at 6'5", 264. And you know what's crazy is that I read a report, I think it was a tweet actually from, I think it was John Keim, if I'm not mistaken, that said something about Chase Young revealing that he still has plates that state that he probably is going to grow another inch or 2 or 3, depending on how those things work themselves out. He could be done growing, but he could continue to sprout up and could grow to 6'7", 6'8", which is insane. I don't want him getting too tall. That's not what you want your edge rushers to be. You don't want 6'8" edge rushers, guys coming off the edge at 6'8", where tackles are able to get up under their pads and make it a lot tougher for those guys to bend the corner and things of that nature. But the guy's a freak of nature, and so his size is off the charts. He's got a well-proportioned frame. I've heard people reference this guy as being chiseled out of clay, and this guy looks like Tarzan, and he doesn't play like Jane, trust me. He looks the part of a true, legitimate, havoc-wreaking edge rusher at the next level. He's got tremendous length at 34-inch arms, and so generally tackles have problems with guys with the kind of length that Chase Young is coming into the league with. And again, he may not be done growing, which is hard to really fathom. I was done growing at like the age of 13. This guy's like 22, 23 years old, or 21, 22, somewhere in that general vicinity. And you're telling me he's probably not done growing, which is absolutely asinine. Speed is ridiculous off the edge. I've noted that. You got to see it in the film study that we did. His explosiveness, his get off, his ability to get up the field, turn the corner is like no other. So elite quickness is also in the mix. His quickness, his first couple of steps off the ball are just a thing of beauty to watch. It's tough for tackles to keep up, which forces tackles to then open up their hips to react to that speed and quickness. And that's when he's able to hit them with a crossover or something inside that it's just hard for them to react to. So speaking of that, his move Rolodex is loaded. And you've got the spin move. I think I want to see him use that a little bit more. I don't think he uses that enough, but I saw him use it a couple of times, and it was effective both times. Latch and snatch. He's awesome with the latch and snatch. I love his latch and snatch. Long arm of the law. He's still developing that. I think he can use that a little bit more as well. STP. That's an awesome move for him as well. Speed to power. Crossover, that's one of his go-to moves right now, is he'll get you to open up with and then of course, the good old-fashioned speed rush. So he'll get you to open up with the speed rush, scare you to death with that. You got to come out of the blocks and you got to open up quickly to be able to contain that. And that's when he'll go outside and then cross you over and go inside. And so right now, those are his bread and butters right there. The speed rush, where he dips and rips the corner. And then you've got, of course, the crossover where he's going to threaten your outside shoulder. You open up to be able to combat that speed, and then he attacks the inside shoulder with the crossover, and you really are just overmatched at that point. He uses his hands really well. I don't think he is as technically sound with his hands as the Bozas, but then again, nobody came into the league like the Bozas using their hands. However, whatever the next step down is, that's Chase Young in terms of hand usage. Stout at the point of attack. A lot of people tried to attack him in the run game, say he's not as good in the run game. I don't know what tape they were watching, but the guy that I watched on tape was just as good against the run as he was the pass. He stacks and sheds. That's part of the reason he's really effective versus the run, is that he's able to lay hands on that offensive lineman and then disregard them when the ball carrier comes. So he's able to stack and shed defenders. He's disciplined. This is a guy that stayed at home. I gave you clips of that versus Clemson and versus Wisconsin, where he stays at home. They want him to take the bait. The final play of the Wisconsin game, or at least the big play on 4th down, where they try to fake him on the dive. He takes 1 or 2 steps inside, but then hightails it outside and makes the play to force a turnover on downs in a critical juncture of that game. I showed some clips against Clemson where he stays at home on the backside of a play and is able to bring down Trevor Lawrence. There were plays where teams tried to get him to buy the bait on a fake jet sweep, only to have a reverse coming the other way to his side, and he stays at home and sniffs it out. Very disciplined football player. He forces the ball out. This is the thing I probably love about him the most. It's not okay. It's not good enough to just get the sack. This guy is going after the ball. And honestly speaking, you see players all the time go for the kill shot. I'd much rather have the football. If the kill shot isn't coming with a fumble attached to it, I'd much rather if the quarterback doesn't know that you're coming, I would love to see a guy literally go up to the quarterback and just take the football from him. I remember once upon a time, Reggie White against the Redskins, ran up to the quarterback and took the ball from him and ran for a touchdown. Like, he went for the sack and then realized, this ball's a little loose. Let me have this. Took the football, wrestled it away, and then just hauled ass for like a 65-yard touchdown run. I'd like to see guys go after the ball more. Chase Young does. And then his elite ability to turn the corner. I highlighted that with a video that I uploaded to my IG of Urban Meyer talking about Chase Young's innate ability to turn the corner and how he doesn't take false steps up the field. He flattens to the quarterback and he does not give ground, and he gets to the quarterback unlike any other pass rusher coming out of the collegiate ranks. And you rarely see guys at the next level turn the corner the way that Chase Young does. When you get to his weaknesses, I was literally nitpicking because there aren't many things that he doesn't do well. And so he can be a little bit more aware of where the ball is. Sometimes he doesn't actually see the ball carrier with the football. It's rare, but I saw it a couple of times on tape. I'm nitpicking. And then I think this is more of his biggest weakness to this point. And it's not really that much of a weakness as much as it is something that he'll get with more exposure, more time in the film room. But it's rush plan refinery. Just having a rush plan going into the game, and as the game progresses, setting tackles up. 3 straight speed rushes. Now they're looking for speed. That's when you cross them over. And when they start looking for the crossover, that's when you go to speed to power. So you go to the STP. Then when they start looking, then at that point, they're all confused. You didn't hit them with 3 different moves. Now he has no idea what's coming. Now you go hard outside a couple of times with the speed rush. Now you spin back inside. Just giving that tackle something to think about, setting him up. I think that's something that he will grow into as his career progresses at the next level. But this is a slam dunk, no-brainer here. Couldn't be more excited about this pick, and I think the Redskins got themselves a stud for the next decade plus to come. You get to the next pick in the draft for the Redskins, 66th overall, 3rd round. Let's just call him an athlete right now. More of a running back. If you listen to Ron Rivera and Kyle Smith talk, he's going to be more of a running back. So let's classify him as such. Running back Antonio Gibson out of Memphis. So we've already broken down Antonio Gibson. I've talked about how excited I am to see this guy on the football field. They view him as a Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara type, which should get you really excited if you're a Washington Redskins fan. Ron Rivera, having seen Alvin Kamara up close and having coached Christian McCaffrey and seeing how much of a difference maker McCaffrey was for them in their backfield, they wanted their own version of that. And I'll take it a step further. There were 2 players in this particular draft that this staff fell in love with at the Senior Bowl. Antonio Gibson was one of those players that they fell in love with at the Senior Bowl. Scott Turner said, I've got to absolutely have this guy. Kyle Smith agreed. And they went and got him. A lot of people thought that Antonio Gibson was more of a 4th or 5th round pick in this draft. They saw a guy that they thought could change the game for them, and they went and got their guy when they felt the need to get their guy. That's my mantra in terms of the draft. You may think a player was overdrafted. You can never tell a team when it was too early or not the right time to get their guy. If they have identified someone that fits into their game plan moving forward, then you go get your guy. You don't wait, because waiting may end up seeing you strike out. Get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. The Redskins have done that here with Antonio Gibson, and I couldn't be more elated to watch this guy on the football field. When this pick was first made, didn't know much about him, went and did my homework, and this is a guy that I'm extremely excited to see on the football field. He's going to be a ton of fun, and the ways that they can create mismatches are going to be plentiful, and I think the best way to do that is with him playing running back. When you put him at wide receiver, I think he still can win, but it's not going to be the obvious mismatch like I've been talking about. The best way to create these mismatches are to put him into the backfield and then motion him out, get that linebacker walked out on him, get that safety. Either way, that guy's going to be at a disadvantage because, again, not many safeties in the league, not many linebackers are running sub 4.4s. This guy can pick him up, put him down. He runs good routes. I think he can run better routes. But when you're a running back, you don't have to run extremely crisp routes like you're a wide receiver. If you just run good routes, you're going to beat most linebackers. You're going to beat most safeties. And so I don't think he's Christian McCaffrey in that regard because he's not as fluid. His hips aren't as fluid. But at the same time, he is a guy that can run, can separate, and I think he's going to be fun to watch at the next level. This is another big-time pickup for the Redskins and another pick that I'm excited about made by Kyle Smith and Ron Rivera in this draft. We move on to now the 4th round and 108th overall selection in the draft. LSU offensive lineman Saahdia Charles is the selection. So as I've mentioned, we already broke down Saahdia Charles, but I will say this about him. In listening to Ron Rivera and Kyle Smith talk about Saahdia Charles after the selection, it sounds like he's going to be left tackle. That's where they're going to play him. But Rivera did say, look, this is a guy that has experience in multiple positions. I gave you guys that information. I talked about his experience which most of his experience came at left tackle, but there was a start at right tackle, and there was also a start at guard. So this is a guy that started at right guard, right tackle, and left tackle. So they've talked about his experience at guard and tackle and how they're going to try him at both positions, but they're going to try him at left tackle first. That's what they drafted him to be. If that doesn't work out, they feel really confident that he can kick inside the guard. But they're going to give him every opportunity to be the left tackle of the future. We'll see how that pans out for them. And they said they want him to learn the guard position because it makes you that much better of a player when you know what the guy next to you is supposed to be doing. So we've talked about positional flexibility and how Ron Rivera loves guys that are flexible and versatile in nature. Saahdia Charles offers you a little bit of that versatility, but make no mistake about it, they drafted this guy to be the left tackle of the future, and we'll see if that takes place. One thing's for sure, I love this selection. I told you guys as you got deeper into the draft, I was okay with the Redskins not having a 2nd round pick. I was okay with the Redskins not pulling the trigger on a 3rd round tackle. Why? Because Saahdia Charles was going to be there in the 4th round. Now, had they not pulled the trigger on Charles at the top of the 4th round, I don't know if he's there when they had their 2nd 4th round selection at 142. One thing was for sure, he was the centerpiece of the Trent Williams deal getting done. The second they saw Saahdia Charles on the board at the time of their selection, they went ahead, pulled the trigger on the Trent Williams deal, and knew that they had their potential left tackle of the future already in tow. So Saahdia Charles is a guy that I don't trust because he's got 2 first names. However, I'm ecstatic that he is a Washington Redskin, especially that kind of value in the 4th round. You're getting potentially a 2nd round tackle in the 4th round. I've already stated to you, I don't think he's ready to start day one. Some of you do think, however, he's ready to start day one. And maybe ultimately he is ready to start day one. I would prefer it if they had someone come in as a veteran that allows this guy to sit and learn the nuances. I'd love a Donald Penn to come back. And not saying that Donald Penn was awesome last year, but he was serviceable. But more so for what Donald Penn can provide for a guy like Saahdia Charles in the locker room. That kind of veteran presence. I'd love to see Saahdia Charles sit and learn and then be ready to go when his number is called. Even if that's, middle of this season, back end of this season, or even next year. I would love to see a mentor of sorts come in and show Saahdia Charles how the left tackle position is played, how you prepare, how you scout the guy that you're going to be blocking or guys that you could be potentially blocking that next week. I'd love to see him learn and then hit the ground running when his number is called and he's ready. But if the Redskins throw him into the fire and it's baptism by fire, I'm fine with that as well. Either way, I love this selection. I think they got tremendous value in the 4th round with offensive tackle Saahdia Charles, and it's another pick that I am extremely happy about for the Washington Redskins. You go to their final pick of the 4th round, 142nd overall, wide receiver out of Liberty, Antonio Gandy-Golden. So we've already broken down AGG. You down with AGG? Yeah, you know me. But seriously, Antonio Gandy-Golden was a guy that I've ranted and raved about the entire process. Talked about how I wanted this guy as a Redskin. If you remember me talking about receivers when we were talking about all of these different scenarios that could play out for the Redskins during our live shows. And even when we were talking about wide receivers during the Draft 101 live series and Redskins fans were there in attendance asking me about receivers that I liked and thought that the Redskins should go after, his name continued to pop up. He was one of the guys that I was infatuated with in terms of his game this offseason and this draft season. And it came to fruition. These types of picks warm my heart because generally I don't get what I ask for, and I've told you guys this many times. Generally, what I ask for, I don't get it. And so I wasn't expecting him to be a Redskin, but somehow, some way, it came to fruition. This is a guy with tremendous size at 6'4", 223. The 4'6" scared some teams. It did not scare me one bit. When you listen to Ron Rivey and Kyle Smith talk, they both talk about his ability in the red zone, his ability in the short yardage, the intermediate game, on 3rd downs when you need a tough catch in traffic. This is the guy you can go to now in the red zone. I talked about that. That was one of my big pros for him is in the red zone when teams struggle, sometimes it's just easier to just throw it up to a big guy and say, go get it for me. And now we have one of those. He just fits in so many different categories. He's big. He's physical. He blocks in the run game. He does everything you like. They love his toughness. They love his physicality. They love his size. But they also love his character and his smarts. This is a guy that is highly intelligent, very eclectic. I think they love that about him as well. He's just the total package. And I couldn't be more excited about a receiver draft pick. I can't tell you the last time I was this excited about a receiver draft pick. I wasn't even this excited about Terry last year. I didn't know what Terry was going to be. I was excited about all the intangibles that Terry brought to the table, but I didn't know Terry was going to do what he did last season. I feel really confident that Antonio Gandy-Golden is going to complete this receiver core. I think people are sleeping on the Redskins receivers. I don't think they're giving them enough credit. It's a young group. They still have a lot to prove, a lot to learn in this league. But when I look at this group, I felt like they were missing a number 2 option to put everybody else in its proper perspective. I think, I know Chris Cooley has said that Terry McLaurin isn't a number 1, he's a number 2. And you know what? Over time, that may actually bear itself out. I think Terry McLaurin's a number 1 wide receiver. Thank you very much. And I think AGG is going to be the perfect complement to what Terry is as a number 1. And that's going to be a nice Robin to Terry's Batman. And then Steven Sims Jr. gives you that 3rd option in the slot. And then I think Kelvin Harmon is a great fourth option at the receiver position. And I think you move forward with that. And any other guys that are able to contribute at the receiver position, whether that's Trey Quinn or someone else that we are not even thinking of right now, so be it. But I think that's how I view this thing. And I really like this group because of the addition of Antonio Gandy-Golden. So I'm excited about this. I'm living my life like it's golden, living my life like it's golden, living my life like it's golden. I'm excited about Antonio Gandy-Golden. You down with AGG? Yeah, you know me. I'm down with AGG. What about y'all? All right, so now we move into the interesting part of the draft. The part of the draft that not a lot of you were really excited. We get to the 5th round, 156th pick overall, the first of 2 5th-round selections. Offensive lineman out of San Diego State, Keith Ismael, is the selection. So Keith Ismael is a 6'3", 309-pound center. Now, he's an interior offensive lineman. Kyle Smith, and more so Ron Rivera, talked about his versatility and talked about this guy's ability to play both guard spots and center. You know how Ron loves his positional flexibility. And so the ability for Keith Ismael to play all 3 interior offensive lineman positions made it a lot easier for him to be the selection here in the 5th round. 6'3", 309, 32-inch arms. So not long arms, not really a big deal when you're getting into the interior offensive linemen, especially centers. But this is a guy that played 13 games and started all 13 of them at center this past season. For his career, 38 played games, 33 of which were starts. All right, 27 of them at center, 5 at right guard, and the final start of his career, or the final position he started at, once at left guard. So 27 at center, 5 at right guard, 1 at left guard. So that's your positional flexibility, if you will. His strengths, he's efficient snap to set. He's got an efficient snap to set. What I mean by that is snap the football up in your stance, ready to protect, ready to block. So that's quick. It's efficient. It's to the point. It allows him to get into his stance and be ready to do work. Good feet, which allow for change of direction and mirror capability. So, the drill that you used to see at the combine all the time, the rabbit drill, if you remember, where, they used to put a guy, they don't do it anymore. They actually got rid of it this past year, but they used to put one player in front of him and he would run around and try to fake the other guy out. And the lineman wasn't supposed to put his hands on him, but just mirror that guy, stay in front of him, kind of whatever he's doing, you do it and stay in front of him. He has that ability to do that. Why? Because his feet are so good. His change of direction is very fluid. So from that standpoint, you really like to see guys like this out in space. You want to get him. And I think he's more suited for a zone run blocking scheme. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But it's his good feet, his mirror capabilities. These are the types of things that lend itself to him being better for a zone run blocking scheme than a power scheme. Head consistently on a swivel looking for work. He's one of the, and again, at the center position, it is very important. It is vital that you keep your head on a swivel. You never know which one of your interior offensive linemen are going to need help. Maybe your right guard gets his ass whooped on this particular snap. Maybe it's your left guard. Either way, if you don't have an assignment right off the snap, if nobody's lined up over you, if there isn't a blitzer coming up the A-gap, or there isn't, a stunt or a twist coming your way immediately, and you just kind of are able to freelance, head on a swivel, look for work. All right, if everybody's doing their job, just go get a piece of somebody. Go tear somebody's ribs up. Every offensive lineman should love ribs. If they're exposed, go eat. All right, so he's one of those guys looking for work. Head on a swivel, looking for work. That's what I want out of my center, and Keith Ismael does that. Positional flexibility. I already talked about that. He can play both guard positions and center. So obviously that was a big coup for Ron and company. And then the 3 abilities, if you will. Availability, reliability, durability. You need to have all three as an offensive lineman. All right. Availability. This guy didn't miss a single game in his career after redshirting his freshman season. I played in every single game that he was eligible to play in and started the final 33 games of his career. This was a guy that was reliable. You knew whatever assignment you gave him, he was going to carry it out. Not always the cleanest, but he was going to carry out his assignment for the most part. So he was a very reliable offensive lineman. And durability. And this is a guy that played through a shoulder injury, ended up having to have surgery at the end of the season, but didn't miss a single game behind his shoulder injury. And so again, durability is a big get for this guy, is a big pro for this guy, as well as availability and reliability. Toughness. I just spoke to this, but I'll elaborate here. Played through a shoulder injury that required surgery in the offseason, which was one of the reasons he wasn't able to lift at the combine. But this is a guy with toughness, man. Football is not a game for the faint of heart. These guys go through so much that you will never understand unless you've played football. And it really doesn't matter at what level. I remember being in high school, and the second week of our training camp in the summertime, I strained my groin. And my groin wasn't right the rest of the season. And so it didn't really heal up until like a month and a half after football season was over. But you played through those kinds of things. So luckily, with these guys, they get a lot more treatment than we did in high school. So, at the end of the day, toughness is something you got to have. You got to be able to play with injuries. He's a tough guy. I think that's something else that Redskins probably like when they selected Keith Ismael. His weaknesses: inconsistent sustain. One of the things that drove me nuts watching his tape was too often his guy was either making the play or involved in making the play. Too often guys were able to stack and shed Keith Ismael. He'd get to the point of attack. He'd put on a solid block initially, and right when that ball carrier came, that guy would toss him aside and make the play. Or they would latch him and snatch him and thrust themselves to the ball carrier. And so I need him to be a little bit more physical at the point of attack in terms of sustaining his block. I'm not asking you to hold, okay, and negate a 5-yard run, but I am asking you to allow that guy to clear the line of scrimmage or clear your block and then let him go, but don't let him go before the running back has cleared your block. And so that's something that drove me nuts watching him. He's on the ground too much for my liking. Way too often, Keith Ismael was on the ground, and for whatever reason. And, generally, I only want to see you on the ground for one or two reasons. Either you're pancaking somebody or you're cut blocking somebody. Outside of that, things happen, piles happen, unfortunate circumstances happen, you end up on the ground. Those are all understandable. But, the times where guys are pitching you on the ground, or the times where you just end up on the ground trying to go make a block, stay off the damn ground. Okay. Generally speaking, nothing good comes of you being on the ground 9 times out of 10. Stay off the ground. More suited for a zone blocking scheme than power. He doesn't create or generate movement in the run game. That's not his thing. His thing is to get in front of someone, wall them off, and create a barrier between ball carrier and defender. He's not generating space at the line of scrimmage. I've seen him driven back into the backfield. I've seen guys take on Keith Ismael, drive him 3-4 yards into the backfield and blow up a play. Like, that's not his thing. Mano y mano. I've seen guys bull rush him to start a playoff, and he's like, hey, guys, guards, help, somebody help. And one of the guards will have to come over and get a piece to help him from getting driven into the lap of the quarterback. So the power game isn't his thing, all right? But when you allow this guy, when you watch him get to reach blocks, when you watch him get to the second level, get up to that linebacker, or when you watch him get out on a screen, that's when he's his most comfortable. So I think he's more, and you watch him pull. He's a very effective puller. So when you watch this guy get out in space, he's a lot more comfortable to me. And so to me, he's more he is a power blocker. he can be beat by quickness. I saw that on tape as well. Some guys getting the best of him off the snap, swim moves, really quick off the snap. And Keith Ismael doesn't know what the hell just happened. Head spinning. All right, so that's something else I'd like to see him tighten up, is not allowing guys to beat him with quickness. And then, as I mentioned, this is on the Carfax. Shoulder surgery this offseason. It prevented him from lifting at the combine. So just something to keep in mind with Keith Ismael. Let me say this in closing on Keith Ismael. Is he better than Chase Roulier? No, he's not. All right. Is he better than the Indiana offensive lineman we took last year? No, he's not to me. I would prefer both of those guys to start over Keith Ismael, if you're asking me. But would I be worried if Keith Ismael had to step in for Chase Roulier midway through the second quarter and you told me Chase wasn't coming back in the game? No, I would not be worried. I think Keith Ismael would step in and do a bang-up job, okay? So if you're asking me about a 5th-round pick, which is usually depth for a roster, if Keith Ismael can provide depth on this roster, I'm going to tell you yes. As a matter of fact, he's better than Ross Pierschbaker, who we drafted out of Alabama last year. He's better than him. So if you're asking me who's better between Ross Pierschbaker and Keith Ismael, I'll tell you it's Keith Ismael. And so I'm happy about that. So I'll take Keith Ismael. Is he a starter? Not exactly. No, you can find better guys to get the job done. But if you're asking me, can he be one of your 8 linemen on game day? I tell you absolutely. I have no problems with Keith Ismael being my backup center and guard. You know, and then a swing tackle, and maybe you got another offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman on the roster on game day. But I'm fine with the selection in the 5th round, 156th overall pick. Keith Ismael for me is a really solid selection by the Washington Redskins. As we move on to the next 5th round pick, 162nd overall, linebacker out of Michigan, Kalik Hudson is the pick. So, of all of the 4 guys at the back end of the draft, this is my favorite one. I'm just going to give you that disclaimer. This guy is fun to watch. And I don't actually know what they're going to ask him to do at the next level. Hell, he just may be a special teams maven and demon at the next level. But whatever the case may be, he's got a lot of the characteristics and traits that Ron Rivera has described when he talks about guys that he's looking to add to the roster for competition. Kalik Hudson kind of embodies all of that here in the 5th round out of Michigan. 5'11", 224, 4.56 40. So the old dreaded ABC 40 time of 4.56. That's actually a really good time for a linebacker, period. These are his numbers. This season, he had 3 tackles for loss. 1.5 of them were sacks. No forced fumbles. 3 pass breakups, so 3 PBUs. No interceptions, and a blocked kick. Now, you look at his career stats. These are really interesting. 25 tackles for loss. 11.5 sacks. 2 forced fumbles. 14 PBUs. 2 interceptions, and this is the one that you should be blown away by. 5 blocked kicks. That is something that I'm pretty sure the Redskins circled, highlighted, and checked off when they said, hey, if we get to the back end of the draft and this guy's still on the board, we should take him. All right? Because special teams can change a game. And we haven't seen that enough here in Washington, but maybe that's about to change with the new coaching staff. So what I want to highlight, though, is his 2017 season. If we could get the 2017 Kalik Hudson, we got something here. All right. Not just a special teams contributor, not a back end of the roster, depth guy at linebacker. We actually have a guy that can help on game day on defense if we can get the 2017 Kalik Hudson back. And I don't know what happened to him in 2018 and 2019, but the 2017 Kalik Hudson was pretty damn special. All right, listen to these numbers. And I want you to kind of listen to these numbers within the framework of his overall career stats that I gave you. And I'll read the 2 so you can compare and contrast. He had 25 tackles for loss in his career. 18 of them came in 2017. Okay. So 2/3 essentially of his tackles for loss in his career came in a little over 2/3, I should say, came in 2017. He had 11 and a half career sacks. Eight of them came in 2017. So you're talking about almost his entire body of work in terms of sacks came in one season. Forced fumbles. He had 2 in his career, both of them coming in 2017. PBUs. He had 14 in his career, 9 of which came in 2017. He had 2 interceptions in his career, both of which came in 2017. You see where I'm going with this? Okay. The guy was an absolute animal in 2017. If we can get that Khaleke Hudson back, we may have something here in the 5th round. So you get to his strengths. Speed is the first strength. I talked about the 4.56 40. You see it on tape. This guy's a blur, especially when no one lays hands on him and he's able to run unabated into the backfield. He's a problem. Tackling ability. He's one of those guys, and he's led Michigan in tackles the last 3 seasons. So he was very reliable in that department. One of those guys that you feel like out in space, if he's able to get close enough to a defender, or a ball carrier, and lay hands on them, some way, shape, or form, they're going to go down. It may not be pretty. It may be him starting at the waist and slipping all the way down to the ankle, but they're going down, and usually that's all I care about. Plays with relentless energy. This guy's a big ball of energy running around the field. I love that about Khaleke Hudson. When you watch him, he's just going balls to the wall, sideline to sideline. He's a hybrid defender, and that's a nice way of saying he's a tweener. So if you want to use it as a pro, then you say he's a hybrid defender. He offers you positional flexibility. If you want to say it as a con and a weakness, then you say he's a tweener. We're going to do both here. But let's start with him being a hybrid defender. Versatility. And look, at Michigan, they have a specific role for you on defense when you're a hybrid safety / linebacker. They call it their Viper role. All right. At Virginia Tech, they called it their Rover. Every team has like a specific role. Some teams call it their Joker, or some teams call it their, Gus Bradley calls it his Leo, and that's more of his defensive end / linebacker, a guy that can stand up in a 2-point stance, walk around, rush both sides. So, in a defense, you might have a specific position for a guy, and you see a guy and you see a specific player fitting that role. He was that for the Michigan Wolverines. And just to give you a little bit of context to that Viper role, that was the role made famous by a former first-round pick in Jabril Peppers. And remember, Jabril Peppers was a guy that was kind of positionless when he got drafted. Is he a safety? Is he a backer? What do you do with Jabril Peppers? He was the similar size. He was 5'11", right around 220 pounds. So Khaleke Hudson kind of fit that same mold and played that position well for the Wolverines after the departure of Jabril Peppers. He's explosive off the snap as a blitzer. Again, when you don't lay hands on this guy, he's a problem. But also off the edge as a blitzer, a lot of times you'll see him, he's not a tall guy, so dip that shoulder. And when you're talking about a 6'5" tackle trying to dip down and block a 5'11" guy that's dipping down and making himself at 5'8", it's a lot tougher for that guy to get down there, bend at the knees and get down. And so you'll see him dip, rip, bend that corner, get around the edge, and get some pressure on the quarterback. So he's explosive off the snap as a blitzer. Has some value as an underneath defender and a disruptor around the line of scrimmage. This is a guy that when he diagnoses run, he just and doesn't have really a responsibility on that particular play other than to blow shit up. This guy gets into the backfield and blows shit up. And he'll make plays, and we're going to talk about a game in particular that I had to go seek out because of the astronomical numbers he put up in that game back in 2017 here in a little bit. But he is a disruptor around the line of scrimmage when he shoots his gun and shoots it quickly. All right. Special teams value. I talked about the block kick, so I don't have to go into specific detail on how this guy can impact the game as a special teams player. 5 block kicks in his career speak for themselves, okay? So I don't really need to go into how this guy can add value on special teams. And then finally, in 2017, first of all, 2017 itself is a pro. All right, that's a strength. There's a game in 2017, however, that if you want the best of Khaleke Hudson, do yourself a favor. Find Khaleke Hudson versus Minnesota. Minnesota and Michigan, 2017. It's a game, kind of wet conditions in the rain. And this guy just goes apeshit in this game. All right. 8 tackles for loss versus Minnesota. A forced fumble in that game versus Minnesota. And 2 sacks in that game versus Minnesota. He was a man possessed versus the Golden Gophers. And that was a lot of fun to watch. That got me excited about Khaleke Hudson. And if we can get that guy and they can find ways to isolate him and get him free and get him into some positions to be successful, he could be a guy that can contribute on this offense. So weaknesses. He's a tweener. Okay, I just talked about him being a hybrid defender. That was the nice way of saying it. Now I'm going the negative route. He's a tweener. All right, he's got a safety body, but he's got a linebacker mentality and a linebacker positional fit. So at 5'11", 224, that's a safety body, but he plays really the linebacker position for all intents and purposes. Yeah, you see him at safety sometimes, but more likely than not, he's doing his work down around the line of scrimmage. Or he's walked out on a tight end, man to man. All right, so, and then another thing that really doesn't do him any justice, and this is rare, his arms are so short. I can't recall seeing a guy with this short of arms before. His arms are 29 inches long. Like, yikes. Generally, everyone is 31 and up. 31, 32, somewhere in there. 29 is really, really short. And you see it when he gets stuck on blocks, which we're going to talk about right now. If he doesn't beat the blocker to the spot or isn't clean, he'll either get stuck on blocks or he'll get engulfed by them. So what you'll see from him on tape is if he's unabated, if nobody blocks him, problem, period. If he's able to beat that offensive lineman to the spot where the play is going, problem, period. But if he's not early to the party, if he arrives to the party on time, he's going to get blocked. And if he gets blocked, he's not getting off of that block, okay? And if he is a guy that's supposed to be holding up at the point of attack and you're counting on him to hold up a gap till the cavalry arrives, don't do that. Because he'll get washed over a full gap and a half and get washed and wiped out of the play. I mean, he's a small guy. So he's not a guy that you're looking to count on in the run game. But if you can get him free, if you can send him as a blitzer, if you can get him to the spot before the lineman gets there, he's a problem. He's solid in zone coverage, but he can be a liability in man-to-man. Tight hips, doesn't have the kind of change of direction that you're necessarily looking for in man-to-man coverage situations. He doesn't kind of see what's happening. He doesn't understand route combinations, doesn't know what's actually happening to him and react fast enough to it. He's not a corner, all right? And he's for all intents and purposes, he's not a safety either. So he doesn't see that this slant is coming and that he needs to open up his hips and turn and be able to get to that tight end's hip pocket to try to break that pass up. That tight end's a full step, 2 steps by him, catching the slant, and he's going to catch up to him and make the tackle. So from that standpoint, I think he's a liability potentially in man-to-man situations. But I also saw some man-to-man situations where he did some Ullman-like work. So there's something here to Khaleke Hudson. He's not just a throwaway 5th-round pick. I want to see what happens with him. He's going to make this football team. If he's healthy, I think he's going to be an addition to this football team. Looking forward to seeing him. And so I like this 5th-round pick by the Redskins, 162nd overall of Khaleke Hudson, linebacker out of Michigan. Now, these final 2 picks, I could have done without them. And honestly, I'm not a 7th-round pick guy. I really don't like 7th-round picks. They rarely make your roster. That's why in my mock draft, I had the Redskins package them up and go up and get a 6th-rounder. There's more value in the 6th round. You're getting a better football player more likely than not. There were some guys that I thought were available in the 6th round that the Redskins could have been better off going after had they had the vision to do so. But they were very content in staying in the 7th round and getting their guys. And maybe they did pick up the phone and call, and teams weren't interested in their 2 selections. Whatever the case may be, we start with the first 7th round pick, 216th overall, safety out of Arkansas. Cameron Curl is the pick. So Cameron Curl is a safety out of Arkansas, 6'1", 206 pounds, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.6 40 at the combine. His season stats: 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. So he was very busy, filled up the stat sheet in 2019. His career stats, get this: 4 tackles for loss. He had 4 tackles for loss this past year. 2 sacks this past year. 3 forced fumbles. He had 2 forced fumbles this past year. 15 PBUs. He had 2 this year. So in the PBU department, he's been putting in work his entire career. This is a 3-year starter at Arkansas. 2 at safety, 1 at cornerback. 2 interceptions in his career, 2 of them this past year. Okay, so this is a guy that, for all intents and purposes, had his best year of his career in 2019. So maybe that gets you excited. However, the tape says something else for me. Let's get into Cameron Curl quickly. Strengths: he was the communicator of the defense for Arkansas. You could see it. I do love guys that understand everybody else's job. You can see him barking out commands to everybody, getting everyone properly lined up. Hey, man, get up on the line of scrimmage. Scooting guys over, kind of making sure everyone got into their proper fits. So you can tell he was the communicator for that defense at Arkansas. Despite his size, he's not afraid to mix it up. He's not a big guy. To me, he has a cornerback frame. We'll talk about that when we get to his weaknesses. But despite his size, he's not afraid to throw his body around. Doesn't mean he does it well. He's just not afraid. And again, wanting to tackle is half the battle, okay? And he's not afraid to tackle. Has some cornerback traits. And the biggest thing that you recognize with him is he's got good route recognition. So I talked about him playing cornerback his freshman year at Arkansas. He was a cornerback. So they made the transition to safety for his sophomore and junior seasons. And you can still see some of that cornerback ability in him. He recognizes routes really well. You can see him playing the ball out in space as some of his cornerback instincts start to take over. So from that standpoint, you can drop him over the slot. Ron Rivey talked about the versatility that this guy provides because of his background as a corner, that you can drop him over the slot. You see him on tape, dropping over the slot, playing guys man to man. I'm not saying it was the best coverage in the world, but you see that he has that ability. His bat pedal is smooth. The transition from bat pedal to, sprint, all of these things are quality. So you can see the background of a cornerback there with Cameron Curl. He's not bad as a half field read safety. All right. So if you split the field in half as a safety for him and say, look, man, we're not going to have you being our single half safety because he's not athletic enough to do it anyway. If you just say, hey, look, we're going to split the field in half and we're going to give you this half, I'm going to give the other safety the other half, he's fine in that regard. I think he does a good job of reading the quarterback's eyes. Again, having been a cornerback, he kind of sees what's happening in front of him and is able to react to it. If you tell him, look, you're going to have a fourth of the field, we're going to play cover 4 here, or you're going to play cover 3, I think you could even handle a third of the field. But anything less than that, you start branching out and giving him more than a half of the field, you're going to find yourself in some serious trouble. But he's a guy that I think, as a half field safety, I think he could do some work. His last year was his best year. So if you're looking for that silver lining, 2019 was by far and away his best year as he continued to make that transition to safety. And so if you're going to hang your hat on something, that's what you're going to hang your hat on. Now you get to his weaknesses. He's not a reliable tackler. So I'm watching him versus LSU. And, oh my God, Edwards-Helaire puts a move on this guy. And it's not even the most vicious, flavor delicious juke I've ever seen. He goes flying. Like, you could tell he didn't see what he was hitting. He just knew that Edwards-Helaire was coming, and he just ducked and went for what he knew. And he whiffed in the worst possible way. I was ashamed to even call him a Redskin at that point. Like, dude, are you serious right now? Like, I had to rewind it a couple of times just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. It was so bad. I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. So he'll miss, and that's not the kind of guy you want as your last line of defense, And so, from that standpoint, I don't love him in that regard. He's not a reliable tackler. That being said, he can tackle, but I wouldn't bet my life on him. I wouldn't bet my last line of defense on him. I wouldn't rely on him to be that guy that if someone breaks into the secondary, he's going to get that guy down on the ground. Takes poor pursuit angles. This drives me nuts with safeties. Look, you don't have to have the most speed in the world to take a quality angle. As a matter of fact, if you're not a guy with high-class speed, all right, if you don't have grade A top choice speed, you better be taking great pursuit angles or else you're going to get beat. You're going to get burnt because you're not fast enough to make up for bad angles. For instance, a guy like Isaiah Simmons, he didn't always take good angles, pursuit angles. As a matter of fact, there are some pretty crummy pursuit angles that he takes. But you know what? When you run a 4.39, you can run whatever pursuit angles you want, okay? Because generally, your speed is going to take over and you're still going to make the play. You can't do that if you're Cameron Curl. You got to take the proper pursuit angle or else you're going to get smoked. And he takes some piss poor pursuit angles. And then when the play's done, he goes, oh, man, I don't want to see that shit. Just take the right pursuit angle. I don't want to, oh, man, I missed it. Don't do that after you miss the tackle. Make the damn tackle. He's got a cornerback frame. He's a safety in a cornerback body. And I don't think there's really much he can do about that. I don't think he's going to grow to 217. And maybe he will. I don't think he will. And I don't know how he does with more weight. He's already not that fast to begin with. If you're going to, and it sounded like Ron Rivera wasn't opposed to potentially moving this guy to corner. I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think he more said that because of them potentially dropping him over the slot as a guy that could, play a little bit of free safety, but I wouldn't do that with him. Lacks instincts at the position. And what I mean by that at the safety position, reading between run or pass, like his job on a play may be, all right, at the snap of the football, he might be, 12 yards away from the line of scrimmage, kind of like a rover, kind of just like a robber, middle of the field. At the snap, his job is to bail and go single high free safety. And when you're doing that, if it's a pass, you just take off. If it's a run, I don't need you 27 yards bailing, on the play. I need you to stop, find out where this play is going. Do they need you in run support? Do you need to take a proper angle? What do you need to do? He struggles with that. Sometimes his job is to come down as a run defender and get into his run fit. Sometimes he's slow to do that. He lacks the instincts to do that. Which also, he lacks the instincts to see which alleys he needs to come down and attack and run support. I talked about the poor pursuit angles, and he's coming down and he's running around guys and he's running up the wrong gap and the play's bouncing outside. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, that play should have went for 4 yards, but because you took a piss poor angle and went in the wrong gap and attacked the wrong alley, now this play just went for 17 yards. What are you doing, guy? So there's some things he's got to clean up. And then, lastly, there's no atypical trait here with him. Nothing stands out. He's not big. He's not physical. He's not fast. He doesn't have elite coverage ability. Like, nothing he does is elite. Everything is ordinary, plain Jane. And this is what you get in the 7th round, though. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. This is why when you get to the back end of the draft, you lower your expectations. Lowered expectations. And I've got pretty low expectations for Cameron Curl. And there was an incident with him in 2018 where he was suspended for socializing with a Mississippi State cheerleader. He said, look, she wanted to take a picture. I was cool with it. We talked. And so it wasn't a big deal. I don't care about that, honestly speaking. Here's my thing. I would have rather the Redskins taken a guy that went undrafted in this year's draft in J.R. Reed out of Georgia. I had him more highly rated than Cameron Curl. I would have preferred them take him at 216. He did not get drafted. J.R. Reed would have been a better fit, similar size safety, better instincts, takes better pursuit angles. Everything that I'm complaining about here, J.R. Reed does. J.R. Reed's actually a faster guy, like a 4.56 safety. I would have preferred them take J.R. Reed. Or how about you trade up these 2 7th-rounders and trade up to get Josh Metellus, a guy that I had the Redskins in my mock draft taking. I would have preferred them to take Josh Metellus. This was, to me, a pick that I'm not really excited about, and we'll see if he even makes the football team. But you throw him in the mix. We don't have a ton of safeties that you're really excited about. He's going to get an opportunity to compete. We'll see what happens with Cameron Curl. And then finally, our last pick in the draft, in the 7th round, edge rusher out of NC State, James Smith-Williams is the selection to wrap up this Redskins draft. So James Smith-Williams is really intriguing for a number of different reasons. 6'4", 265, 34-inch arms. Does that sound familiar to you? It should, because that's pretty much the same size as Chase Young, minus an inch, 1 pound heavier, and the same length of arms. So that tells you that that's the kind of DNA makeup that Ron Rivera and Kyle Smith are looking for when they're looking for edge rushers. So they're looking for guys that are big, long paws, and athletically gifted. This guy ran a 4.6. He tore up the combine. So I think that's when he first got on a lot of people's radar. Is he tested really well at the combine. Ran a 4.6, 28 reps. When you got 34-inch arms, me being a guy with longer arms, I know how hard it is to get 225 up 28 times. All right? When you got longer arms, that's why these Samoan guys with these short, stubby arms, big bellies, and they just pop it off of their belly or they pop it off their chest. Their arms are like this long. And so, yeah, they're popping out 43 reps. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. And I'm not negating their strength. Still got to be strong to get it up that many times, but you don't have as far to go. You got 34-inch arms to get 28 reps. That's pretty damn impressive. So he looks the part physically. He's similar in stature to Chase Young. When you look at him, he's chiseled. He's got the kind of physique and frame you're looking for at the next level. But these numbers are so underwhelming. His season stats this year: 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack, no forced fumbles, no PBUs, no interceptions, no block kicks. That was in 7 games. We'll talk about that a little bit later. His career stats: 12 and a half tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 3 PBUs, no interceptions, 1 block kick. That's in 42 games, okay? I repeat, that's in 42 games. Now, I want you to take this, what I'm about to say, and kind of let this register. Like I kind of said with Khaleke Hudson, I want you to compare and contrast career stats versus 2018, all right? So 2018 was by far and away his best season. It was really his only season if you're talking about production. So 2018, all right, so career stats, 12 and a half tackles for loss, 9 and a half of which came in 2018. So you're talking about literally 3/4 of his tackles for loss in his career came in one season, 2018. 8 sacks in his career, 6 of which came in 2018. So you're talking 4/5 of his sacks in his career, or I take that back, 3/4 of his career total of sacks came in one season. Forced fumble. He had 1 forced fumble in his career. That came in 2018. He had 3 PBUs in his career, 2 of which came in 2018. No interceptions and no block kicks in 12 games. So pretty much all of his body of work is in 2018. Anytime, and this is always one of the big no-nos for me, anytime I got to go back, and you weren't hurt all of the next season, anytime I got to go back to a previous year to actually get tape that is helpful, that's a red flag for me. You played in 2019, but that tape isn't very useful to me because you didn't do anything in those games. So I got to go back to 2018 to actually see you get a sack, to bag a quarterback. All right, that's problematic for me. Anyhow, strengths. Exciting physical and mental makeup. This was a team captain at NC State. All right, this is a guy that a lot of people on the team looked up to. All right, this is a guy that they gave the number 1 jersey to at NC State, which is it's a big accolade. They don't hand out number 1 jerseys to just anybody. You have to earn that. On the field, off the field, sportsmanship, doing the right things in the classroom. You have to personify what it means to be a wolf pack. He did that. So his mental makeup kind of fits in with the Ron Rivera culture that they're building here. Antonio Gandy-Golden, these guys that are extremely intelligent. This is a guy with a 4.9 GPA in high school. All right. This is a guy that was working as a intern at IBM. So again, this is a really intelligent guy. All right. And his physical attributes get you excited. So he's got some stuff there. And I talked about 2 guys that the Redskins fell in love with at the Senior Bowl. This was the other one. All right. So Antonio Gibson was the first. James Smith-Williams was the other guy that they fell head over heels in love with at the Senior Bowl. And they probably said to themselves, if he's around in the later rounds, we'll take him. So he was here in the 7th round. They said, what the hell? Why not? Extremely explosive, twitchy mover with closing speed. So another one of these guys, when unblocked, he's problematic. So if you don't block him on the backside of a play, he's going to make the play. All right. He's that kind of guy. If you try to cut him and you miss and he gets a straight direct line to your quarterback's going down pretty hard. He's going to get there in a hurry. He's very quick. He's very twitchy. And you see it. Uses length well at the point of attack. He does a tremendous job of standing up tackles at the point of attack, stacking the hell out of them. I think he does a great job with his bull rush of using his arms. They're go-go gadget arms. When he extends those things, he gets some real leverage and he's able to drive guys back sometimes. So I think he uses his length very well into his advantage. I'd like to see him go long arm of the law every now and again, because one arm is always better than 2, and he never does that. And there's no rhyme or reason to his game. He has absolutely no skill whatsoever. So he's got a lot of work to do. Effective bull rush against lesser tackles. When he finds a guy that can't handle his bull rush, he's going to kick his ass. Now, I say that, but that's the only move he does. Like, he doesn't even have a speed rush. His go-to move is bull rush. That's it. He's got a fastball. It's his bull rush. Doesn't have a changeup, no curve, no split finger, nothing off of the fastball, just a fastball. If you can hit fastballs, you're going to hit for a pretty high average against James Smith-Williams. So his weaknesses, he doesn't shed blockers after stacking them. Like, what's the point of standing a guy up if you're not going to try to dislodge that blocker and get to the ball carrier? I mean, there's something to be said about, staying in your gap and clogging up a rush lane. Sure, that's, you know what? I take that back. There is something to be said about standing up a guy, not getting blown up and pushed out of a gap and uprooted. But, I don't want you to just stand there. I actually want you to be a participant. Shed that guy and get to the ball carrier. He doesn't do that. He has no moves in his Rolodex whatsoever. So we talked about Chase Young earlier and how his Rolodex is just full. He's scrolling through the Rolodex trying to figure out what move he wants to use next. And this guy's Rolodex is completely blank. It's empty. He needs to go to Chase Young and borrow a couple of moves because he has none. It's just a bull rush. And I'm like, dude, you don't even use speed. I didn't even see one speed rush. And I went through several games just to make sure, well, maybe he didn't feel like speed rushing that game. So I turned on another game and there was no speed rush there. It was just bull rushes. And then I turned on another game and I'm like, so this is what we're doing? Huh? This is what we're going to do, guy? We're not going to use anything else? No long arm of the law. No, one arm pole vault. No long arm of the law. Nothing. Just 2-arm bull rush. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you got me. That's piss poor. He needs some work. Little to no production outside of 2018. And even the 18 production, it was solid. It wasn't earth-shattering. It was 6 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. You know, it was a forced fumble. Like, it wasn't change the world production. So, you know, this guy just, there's stuff here, but there's so much work to do. And then this is the biggest problem with this selection: injury concerns. I talked about the 7 games that he played in this past year in 2019. That was a trend. That was not an anomaly for him. 3 of his 5 seasons at NC State ended with season-ending injuries. He entered the NC State campus in 2015. He started out the first 3 years. He was going to play as a true freshman. He got hurt after 3 games, missed the rest of the season, so he used his red shirt. He comes back in 2016. He plays the first 7 games of the season, misses the final 4. He missed 1 before that, misses the final 4 due to a season-ending injury. That was on his elbow. He comes back in 2017, plays all but 1 game. He comes back in 2018, plays all 12 games. Good for him. Then in 2019, he plays in 7 games, misses the final 3 games of the season due to injury. All right, so this is a guy that has dealt with injuries his entire career at NC State. And I try to stay away. After having the history that we've had with guys with injuries, these are the kind of guys I try to steer clear of. But look, he's a 7th round pick. You roll the dice on 7th rounders. You see a guy with a bunch of talent and you say, we can get him in our building and we can coach him up. Maybe there's something here. That's what you do with 7th round picks. That's the time to take a guy with character issues and red flags. That's the time to take a guy that had some injury concerns, but he's talented. That's the time to do it in the 7th round. So I'm not going to bitch and complain and moan about that because he has talent. It's just untapped and undeveloped. And this is the last thing I want to leave you with James Smith Williams. He showed up at NC State at 196 pounds and transformed his body from a 196-pound frail body boy to a 264-pound grown-ass man. So in that transition, you're going to have some bumps and bruises, and you got to learn how to play with your new physique and frame. So I think he's still growing into his body, and he's learning how to use it. And so I wouldn't give up on him, but I don't love the pick, but he's a 7th round pick. I mean, what are you going to do? So that's James Smith Williams in a nutshell. So I know this was a longer video than you're used to, but that is the Redskins 2020 NFL draft in a nutshell. Love really 5 out of the 8 picks. I liked at least 6 out of the 8 picks. Honestly, I could have done without the last 2 picks, which I'm not a 7th round guy anyway. So unless I feel like you got a true diamond in the rough in the 7th round, I could do without 7th round picks. You know, the last 7th round pick I got excited about was Trey Quinn. I rarely get excited about 7th round picks. They're usually Ted Bolsters. You remember Ted Bolster? You guys remember him? Probably not. That's the kind of guy you get in the 7th round, usually. So anyway, I'm excited about this draft class. I think this is one of those foundation building draft classes. When we look back on what became of the Ron Rivy administration in Washington, we're going to look back on this draft and say, man, they did some yeoman-like work in that draft. Getting Chase Young, obviously, getting Antonio Gibson, getting AGG. Yeah, you know me. Saahdia Charles, even though he's got 2 first names and I don't trust him, that's a hell of a pickup in the 4th round. And even a guy like Hudson could actually be somewhat of a contributor on this football team, even if it's only on special teams in that capacity. I'm excited about this draft. What says you? Leave it down in the comment section. How do you feel about this draft? I told you guys there wasn't any value at the tight end position, so I didn't have a problem with them taking not taking a tight end. I told you that the value at cornerback was dwindling. I didn't have a problem with them not taking a cornerback in this draft. I know some of you were upset about Bryce Hall not getting selected. Look, come off of it, okay? At the end of the day, I liked what they did in the 5th round. I didn't have a problem with it. They didn't have a 6th round pick, and that's when Bryce Hall went in the 6th round. So it is what it is. At the end of the day, I thought this was a really quality draft by Kyle Smith, Ron Rivy, and company. And we'll see how this all works out as we get to the 2020 season. So I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. Looking forward to your comments in the comment section about how you feel about this draft. And also looking forward to chopping it up with you guys. I know there's so much to talk about on Thursday as we will go Redskins Report live on Thursday night, 8 p. Eastern Standard Time. For me, your man Louie T, thank you for joining me. You guys take care. Have a good one. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time.
Louie T Network.